Hello there, and welcome to this special boring history episode on the rather boring lives of the peasants in medieval times. If you are looking for a calming and thought-provoking historical story to carry, you're off to dreamland. You have come to the right place. Before we begin our journey back in time, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from and what time of day it is for you right now. Feel free to leave a comment and say hello. And if you enjoy this type of relaxing educational content, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. All right, let us set the stage, shall we? Settle in. Let your body rest. Let your eyes grow heavy. You are safe here, surrounded by stillness and calm. Tonight, we take a gentle step back in time, not to the lavish courts of kings, nor to the noisy chaos of battlefields, but to a quiet corner of medieval Europe, to a time long past, and to the life of someone rarely remembered. A person without statues or titles or tales sung by minstrels. A peasant, unseen by history's grand spotlight, yet living a full life, day after day. A life made of chores, of ritual, of weathered hands and well-worn paths. Let us walk in their shoes, not as an adventure, but as a lullaby. A soft rhythm of fields and firewood, of muddy paths, slow routines, and quiet resolve. The year is somewhere between the 12th and 14th centuries. The air is cool and heavy with mist. You are in a small village tucked between hedgerows, surrounded by farmland and shaded by the edges of a deep forest. Imagine yourself there, in a thatched roof cottage. A bit of smoke curling from the chimney. The scent of damp straw and wood smoke drifting through a tiny window. Let us begin. Imagine the first light of morning. There's no alarm, no ticking clock, no phone to buzz. Instead, you awaken to the sound of a rooster crowing somewhere not too far off, muffled by distance and dew. The sky is not yet bright, just a soft bluish gray like wool soaked in milk. The air is cold enough that you hesitate to leave the bundle of rough wool blankets that barely keep the chill at bay. The cottage is small. It's one room mostly. The walls are made of wattle and daub-woven branches packed with clay and straw. You can see the texture of the dried mud cracked in places, patched with time. The roof above your head is low and thatched, humming softly with mice and morning wind. The hearth is the center of your home and of your life. It holds a tiny pile of fading coals from the night before. You stir them gently, coaxing them with a few dry twigs, and eventually a flame returns. Yet the fire is small, fuel is precious. Most mornings there is not enough wood to burn freelies, just enough to warm a pot of thin porridge, perhaps with a few herbs or scraps of last night's cabbage. You eat with your fingers, or from a simple wooden spoon. The bowl is shared, perhaps, with a child or a grandparent. It is not a grand meal, but a familiar one. Warm. Sufficient. You pull on your tunic coarse wool, stiff with old wear-end. Fasten it with a strip of leather. Step into clumsy wooden shoes. Your feet already know the way the ground feels. Damp, soft, slightly uneven. Now the day begins in earnest. Your first task is likely the animals. You do not own many, perhaps a pig, a few chickens, maybe a sheep if you are lucky, and a cow shared with other families in the village. The animals are your life and your livelihood. You step out into the morning fog. Earth squishes quietly beneath your shoes. The smell of mud, straw, and manure is ever present, but not unpleasant. It smells like survival. The chickens cluck softly, and you gather eggsy small, pale things nestled in straw. A pig snuffles in the corner, eyes bright and curious. You speak softly to it. Most peasants do. You do not name the pig, but you speak to it all the same. Then comes the field. You walk down a path you know by heart, past the same bent tree, the same patch of wild nettles. The field is long and has been worked by your family for generations. You do not own it, no. The land belongs to the Lord, but it is yours to care for. The soil is familiar beneath your hands. You work it slowly. No urgency, just the endless rhythm of turning, planting, harvesting, repeating. In summer, the sun is hot and brutal. In winter, the ground is hard and stubborn. But now, perhaps it is spring or autumn. The weather is temperate. The birds are active. Slow wind passes through the distant trees. You hum a little as you work. Nothing tuneful, just a murmur to pass the time. By midday, your stomach growls. You return home for a second meal, maybe bread, rough and dry, perhaps a stew if luck has been kind recently. You eat slowly in silence, or with a few soft words exchanged with family. The village is small. Everyone knows everyone. You may stop to speak with a neighbor about the weather, about the Lord's new tax, or the price of wool in the nearby town. The words are brief. Life is too busy for long chats. Afternoons are filled with mending, tending, gathering. You may weave baskets, patch your clothes, or collect firewood from the forest's edge. Every task has weight. Every item is precious. As the sky begins to darken, the cottage becomes the center once more. You return home. You feed the fire again, carefully. You sit on a stool near the hearth. The smoke curls lazily upward. There are no books, no clocks. Time is measured by the sun, the fire, and your own tired bones. Someone may sing softly. A lullaby passed down, its words half remembered. Children curl up together in a pile of cloth, and you lie back, your head resting on a sack of straw. The stars peek through the gaps in the roof. Your muscles ache, but they are used to this ache. The stillness of night feels earned, and slowly you drift off to sleep. Just as you have every day for as long as you can remember. The rhythm of daily life moves forward like a slow-turning wheel. But amid the quiet toil of countless peasants, there were a few whose lives briefly caught the attention of history's pen. Let us turn to one such figure now, not a king, not a warrior, but a commoner like you, who lived and left behind a trace. Not every name from the Middle Ages vanished into the fog of time. Once in a while, a record survives a single name scribbled in the margins of a tax roll. A brief mention in a church document, a witness to a land dispute remembered only because a clerk happened to note it. Let us now imagine such a figure. We cannot know everything about them, but what survives offers a faint sketch, enough to fill with gentle color, softly, patiently. Not to dramatize, but to remember. Let us speak of a woman named Marian, recorded in the 14th century in the manor court rolls of Wakefield in northern England. She was neither noble nor infamous, but she lived. She worked. She endured. Her name appears in a legal case from the year 1324, not as a criminal, not as a noble, but as a tenant. The record says this: Marian, daughter of Hugh, held a toft and a croft by copy of court roll. A toft a simple house, croft a small piece of farmland, copyhold land tenure based on feudal tradition. She had a home, she had land, and she had a name. Now we imagine. It is late summer. Marian wakes early, her bones creaking quietly as she rises from her low bed of straw. She is not young, but not old either. Perhaps in her 30s, though time in her world ages people quickly. Her hands are rough, weathered like old bark. She wraps her head in a linen coif, tying it at the nape of her neck with practiced ease. The days are long. There is always something to tend. Marian is a widow, perhaps, or a woman who never married. It is not recorded. She may live with Kenor alone, save for the company of her animals and the low voice of the wind outside her home. Her toft is modest, wooden beams, smoke-darkened walls, a roof thick with thatch. Inside, the smell of damp wool and smoke lingers, never fully fading. The croft is her livelihood, the land she tills, day by day. She grows onions, leeks, beans, and tends a few rows of flax, which she harvests and prepares with painstaking care to spin into linen. Each movement is familiar: the soil beneath her nails, the worn handle of the hoe, the ache in her shoulders. It is not ease she seeks, it is continuity. The day must be done. The rent must be paid. Once a year, she walks to the manor court. There, before the steward, she kneels and recites the words that affirm her tenancy. She hands over her rent a small fee, paid in coin, or more often in kind. A few eggs, a portion of barley, a woven cloth. She does not speak often at the court, but the clerk hears her name: Marian, daughter of Hugh. It is copied into the roll with a quill in faded ink. One line, one moment, but it is there. Marian may have helped birth children in the village, may have sung softly at wakes, may have walked every path between fields, barefoot in the spring, shoes in the winter. She may have watched as the sky turned red with dust during harvest. may have waited in fear during bad winters, when grain spoiled and snow stayed too long. And when she died peacefully, we can hope her name may have been mentioned in passing at the court once more. Her land passed to a nephew or returned to the manor. But that first line, Marion, daughter of Hugh, endures. And so in your mind's eye, imagine her, there in her field, tying up leeks into bundles. Imagine the wind pulling gently at her sleeves, the sun warm on her back, her brow furrowed not in frustration but in focus. She is not remarkable by history standards, but she lived a full day, and another, until the world turned on and time buried her name. But not completely. Tonight you have heard it, and that is enough. Now, let us leave Marion gently to her evening chores and look past the visible, beyond the fields and the houses, to the quiet mysteries beneath the surface of medieval life. What do we truly know of these people when so little was written and so little was saved? Let your mind quiet even further now. Let the pace slow again as we journey not through the bustling life of the village, but into what lies beneath it. Beneath the grass, the stone, the centuries, into the remnants left behind in soil and silence. Archaeologists today dig with great care in fields where peasants once lived and worked. What they find are not treasures in the usual sense, not gold, nor weapons, nor jewels, but things far humbler, and yet in their simplicity, more revealing. Imagine a broken wooden spoon, unearthed near the remains of a hearth, its handle worn smooth by years of stirring, scraping, and serving. Not precious, but unmistakably human. Or a clay pot, its rim chipped, its glaze long since faded. Perhaps it once held lentils or milk. Perhaps it fell from a shelf on a windy night, cracked, and was quietly buried under years of swept dirt and forgotten time. Archaeology does not give us loud answers. It gives us fragments, patterns, quiet affirmations of everyday life. For example, in one English village, archaeologists uncovered the faint lines of dozens of houses, long since rotted away. The outlines in the soil showed how small they were just a few paces across. But inside those outlines, they found tiny hearths, shards of pottery, animal bones from meager meals. A spindle whirl round and heavy once used by someone, likely a woman, to spin wool into thread. They found one carved from stone, another from a smooth piece of reused pottery, each a tool shaped by hands for hands. Nearby, in what had once been the edge of the village, they found layers of refused broken items. Cast-off bones, even human hair preserved in mud. From these details, patterns emerged. Villagers ate mostly bread and pottage. They rarely consumed meat except on holy days. Their diets were surprisingly rich in leeks, beans, barley. They brewed weak ale not for pleasure, but because water could not always be trusted. They worked hard, walked far, and aged quickly. Their bones showed signs of stress-stooped spines, worn-down knees, and repetitive strain. But they also lived in community. Many buried their dead in shared plots. Some graves had traces of herbs laid with the body, perhaps for scent or blessing, or both. In the clay soil of York, archaeologists found one such grave marked only by a few stones and the outline of a coffin long since decayed. Inside, a woman had been buried with a small cross of lead tied around her neck. Not valuable, but meaningful. Perhaps her only ornament in life, or a parting gift, tied with prayer. In another village, hidden beneath layers of silt, they found a child's toya, tiny carved horse on wheels. It had no paint left, no glitter, no name scratched into its side. But its axles still turned. We will never know whose child laughed over that toy, nor whether they lived long or fell to one of the many plagues or famines that haunted the age. But the toy tells us. There was play, there was affection, there was joy, even in scarcity. Even the very layout of the villages tells a quiet story. Peasant homes were clustered tightly together, often around a central green. Paths wound between them like threads in a tapestry. At the heart of each was a church, a small square building, often cold and echoing, but central to the rhythm of life. Feasts, baptisms, marriages, and funerals. All were held there, the same space for sorrow and celebration. And yet beyond these remains, beyond the shards and the shadows, we are left with questions. What songs did they sing? What jokes did they share? What did they whisper to themselves as they stirred soup or walked home beneath the stars? These things were not written down, vanished into the wind, the way smoke from a hearth drifts upward and disappears. And still, we try to hear them. Through every spindle whirl, every tooth worn down from tough bread, every cooking pot scorched on one side, we lean closer to their world. We do not romanticize it. We do not imagine it was easy. But we understand it was real. Real and quiet, hard and human. And now long, long gone. So now, let us leave the buried things in peace. Add. Let the earth settle over them once more, like a blanket of moss and time. Let us gently rise again, not into grandeur, but into contrast. Let us now look at what life was like, not for the peasant, but for those who never tilled the soil, nor mended their own shoes. Let us drift into the lives of the privileged few, those who looked down literally and socially upon the village, and yet depended on it entirely. Let us lift our gaze now, slowly, gently from the worn earth of the peasant's field, to the stone towers that rose just beyond the village horizon. There, in the shadowed distance, stands the manor. Not a castle, not quite but grand by comparison. A large stone or timber hall, sloping roof, tall windows, some glazed, many shuttered. Smoke rises from chimneys, thicker and sweeter than the peat fires in the village below. It is the home of the lord, the landholder, the tax collector, the judge, and sometimes the absent presence who ruled from afar. Imagine yourself inside that hall. It is dim, though candles flicker in brackets against the wall. Tapestries hang thickly, partly for decoration, partly for warmth. They depict hunting scenes, saints, or embroidered family crests. Beneath them, the stone walls sweat in winter and crackle in summer. The air is richer here, heavier with cooked meat, perfumed oils, and warmed wine. Yet, the lord or lady rises later than the peasant. There is no field to till, no wood to chop. But the day is still filled with decisions, appearances, duties of status. They are dressed not in coarse wool, but in layers of linen, velvet, and fur. Their garments are clasped with brooches, hair combed and scented, their shoes soft-soled and handmade. The first meal of the day is far grander than a peasant's, though by modern standards still modest. Perhaps a soft bread, eggs, and a cut of cold meat. A servant stands by with wine or ale. The table is carved. The goblets, if not silver, are at least polished pewter. Servants shuffle quietly about the hall. They refill jugs, adjust chairs, tend to the dogs who lounge near the hearth. One might be tasked with keeping the fire lit, adding logs of oak or ash, woods far too precious for the villagers' use. The lord may preside over the manor court that day, not in robes, but in authority. Villagers arrive, caps in hand, to settle disputes, report damage to the fields, or pay rents. There is little ceremony, but the power dynamic is clear. From a raised chair, the lord hears complaints. Two tenants argue over a boundary hedge. Pig has wandered. A roof collapsed. A fine is issued. A judgment made, all recorded carefully by a steward with neat handwriting and a steady pen. The afternoon may involve correspondence letters read aloud from other lords, or news from the royal court. Perhaps a falconer arrives, and a hunting expedition is planned. The forest, off limits to peasants, is a playground for the elite. There, the lord rides surrounded by dogs, armor lightly worn, bow at hand. It is not a necessity, this hunt. It is sport, and it signals status. The deer are not just food, they are privilege. Back in the manor, the evening meal is the day's pinnacle. The table stretches long, candles flicker. Platters of roasted meat are laid down: duck, lamb, sometimes fish and cream. There are spiced stews, jellied fruits, loaves crusted with herbs. The food is plentiful, though not always fresh. Preserved with salt, flavored with imported spices. Music hums in the background, a stringed instrument, or a voice softly singing. A visiting friar might tell stories. A minstrel, hired for the night, may sing of knights and battles. There is laughter, but it is subdued. Guests are measured in their words. Manners are watched closely. Spilled drink or a misplaced spoon can mark someone for months. Upstairs, the bed is raised high, piled with quilts and furs. A fire crackles in the corner hearth. Servants warm stones to be wrapped and placed beneath the sheets. In some houses, a cat or dog is allowed near the foot of the bed for warmth. The Lord lies back, far removed from the wind and rain that pelt the cottages outside. But even in luxury, the cold still seeps in. Winter is not tamed easily. Sleep comes, not with a lullaby but with silence. A candle guttering out, the weight of thick curtains drawn closed. And below, in the dark lanes of the village, the peasant also sleeps beneath fewer blankets by a smaller fire, but with the same weariness in their bones. Different lives, same sun, same cold, same cycle of breath and season. Now, as evening deepens, imagine the manor's great hall growing quieter, its echoing conversations reduced to the soft clink of metal cutlery being cleared, and the shuffle of servants gathering scraps from the table. The air smells of wax and spice, of meat fat cooled on pewter plates, of ash settling over the last coals of the kitchen fires. Down below in the village, the day's final embers glow in hearths that were never large enough to begin with. There is no feast to clear, only a pot scraped clean, a crust of bread folded into a cloth for mourning. But while the Lord's household drifts into privacy, the village does not yet sleep. Not all labor ends with the sun. Some peasants work by moonlight out of necessity. A loom creaks in the shadows, where a woman spins wool to sell at market. In another home, a father reshapes a broken tool, hammering it softly on a stone warmed by the fire. Time stolen from sleep, offered to survival. And above them in chambers padded with tapestries and cushions, a noble woman reads a prayer from a hand-copied book. The pages glow gold in the candlelight. Her hands, smooth and clean, trace the lines gently, not out of exhaustion, but as a ritual of peace. She sets the book aside, and a servant draws the curtains. She sleeps in silence. Yet even among the elite, not all is comfort. Not all is ease. There is fear in their world, too different in shape, but constant. Fear of scandal, of betrayal, of losing favor with those above them, a missed alliance, a failed harvest from lands they do not till, a night insulted at a feast hall could change their fortunes. So while the peasant fears the wolf at the edge of the woods, the Lord fears the hawk circling above their status. Different dangers, same watchfulness. While the peasant tends their own wounds with poultices made from garlic and pig fat, the elite summon herbalists, surgeons, and prayers. Yet often the outcomes are no different. A fever ignored no less in silks than in rags. Let us picture them both to children in two different homes. One, a noble child tucked between linen sheets, listens as a wet nurse hums a lullaby written generations ago. Outside, a hound paces softly on the tiled floor. The other, a child of the village, curls next to siblings under a patched woolen blanket, listening not to music, but to the creak of the roof timbers in the wind. Their lullaby is the sound of a mother grinding herbs by firelight, and yet both fall asleep, with hope, with dreams, with the same sky overhead. The rhythms of life, waking, eating, working, resting, flow through manor and cottage alike. Unequal? Yes, but not unconnected. The peasant grows the barley, the Lord drinks the ale. The shepherd tends the sheep, the lady wears the wool. The mason shapes the stone, the noble stands beneath the archway. They do not dine together, they do not share fates, but they share the same century, the same rain, the same plagues, the same church bells tolling in the distance. Now let us follow the sound of those bells coing through the hills back to the church itself. It stands between the manor and the village. Neither peasant nor lord owns it outright, though both give to it, and both bow their heads inside it. Imagine yourself now walking along a narrow, well-worn pathway, shoes squelching softly against the earth, still damp from last night's rain. The mist clings low to the ground, curling around your ankles, blurring the edge of the hedgerows. Ahead, rising not grandly but sturdily, is the village church. It is small by cathedral standards, with crumbling stones and a roof that leaks during heavy weather. But here, in your world, it is vast, important. It is the center of rhythm, ritual, and rest. The door creaks on its hinges, rough iron scraping gently against wood polished by hundreds of hands over generations. You step inside, and the hush wraps around you. It's thicker than the fog, still as sleep. The walls are bare except for a crude mural of saints painted long ago, their faces faded, their eyes oddly kind. A simple altar rests at the far end, covered with linen and beeswax candles. The smell is of cold stone, spent incense, and centuries of whispered prayer. You sit on the edge of a wooden bench, and the stillness settles deep into your bones. Here your life is marked: baptisms, marriages, funerals. The calendar of saints orders your seasons more than any sun. There is no need to know the exact date. It is the week after St. Hildegard's Day, or 2 days before the feast of St. Barnabas. The priest, usually tired, often distant, arrives wearing robes that once gleamed, but now hang heavy with use. He does not look you in the eye, speaks in Latin words you do not fully understand, but know well enough to feel their shape. This is not a place for questions. It is a place for quiet. You kneel, though your knees ache. You pray, though you do not always know what to ask for. Health, perhaps. Rain, but not too much. A safe birth for your cousin's wife. End to the ache in your teeth. And then it is done. The bell tolls once, twice, then falls silent. You return to the world of wood smoke and soil. Your body bends with work. But your mind carries that hush, the faint echo of stone and psalms. Back in the fields, the rhythm resumes. The village breathes in and out like a single creature, its people rising with the light, lowering with the dusk. No one owns time here. It simply passes, like clouds over the hills. In the evening, after your simple supper, you pass the time with tasks too small for daylight, mending a tear in your tunic, cleaning the inside of your boots, placing dried herbs near the bed to soften the smell of mildew. Someone nearby hums softly, a lullaby passed down from a grandmother whose name has long since faded. You do not know where the tune came from, but you know all the words. And in that low song, in the warmth of the hearth's last embers, in the scratch of wool against your cheek as you lie back down, you remember that you are part of something old, quiet, worn smooth with time. Just as you settle into sleep again, outside, the bell tolls softly one more time. The sun is now a smear of fading gold behind the trees, casting long shadows across the cottages and fences. Your muscles ache in the familiar place's shoulders, lower back, hands stiff from grasping wooden tools. The smell of wood smoke hangs low in the village air. Chickens mutter in their roosts. Pig roots once more at the door before settling with a sigh. Evening is not yet sleep. There's always a little more to do. You step outside, a worn shawl draped around your shoulders. The sky, though darkening, still holds a fading blue. One star appears, then another. The air is cool and smells of dry straw, wet earth, and distant moss. By your side, a small wooden bucket swings as you walk to the village well. The well is old stones worn smooth by countless hands, buckets, and ropes. You wait your turn quietly. No one speaks much. Words at this hour are rationed. The bucket descends, creaks faintly, then rises again, heavy and dripping. The water is cold and clean. It's not sweet, but fresh enough. You carry it back, stepping carefully to avoid the deeper patches of mud. Past the little stone markers that serve as boundaries. Past your neighbor's shuttered window, through which a candle flickers dimly. Once home, you stoke the fire just a little. You wrap the extra water for use in the morning. You listen to the sounds beyond your own door. Cough from the next cottage. A dog shifting in its sleep. Dent. The faint clatter of a spoon against a pot, someone eating late perhaps, or boiling herbs for a remedy. You share a few low words with your family or housemates, perhaps a story, perhaps silence. Not all evenings are filled with conversation. Some are just filled with presence. And then comes the final task. Checking the shutters, tucking cloth into the cracks to keep the wind out, wrapping your feet with scraps of linen to stay warm through the night. Your bed is made of straw, stuffed roughly into a wooden frame. It creaks as you lie down, and tiny flecks of dust float into the air, briefly illuminated by the firelight before disappearing into darkness. Above you, the thatched roof seems impossibly high in the dark, though you know you could touch its lowest beam if you reached out. You close your eyes, and slowly the world narrows to sound. The low crackle of fire, the wind against the shutters, the slow, steady breathing of those nearby, the occasional settling of the roof timbers, and through it all, sense of sameness, stillness, of the day having passed, as days always do. Morning creeps in slowly, not with a bang, but with a soft shift in the darkness. At first, you're not quite sure what woke you. The fire has died to ash. The chill of morning has settled over your skin like a second, colder blanket. Somewhere nearby, a rooster calls, out its voice rough, indignant, then silence again. You do not move at once. You listen. The wind has changed. The thatch above you rustles in a new direction, and you think you hear something. Different. You rise quietly, careful not to wake the others. The floor is cold. The wool blanket slips from your shoulders. You pull your tunic close and tiptoe to the door, lifting the heavy wooden bar that secures it at night. The morning air touches your face like a damp cloth. The sky is gray, layered with cloud, and the usual sounds, the livestock, the birds, the creaking of wood are all in place. But then you hear it again, a crack not far off. Not a branch breaking beneath a bird, but something heavier, slower. Your eyes scan the trees at the edge of the village, just beyond the fields where wild grass grows tall in the wetter seasons. Just there you think you see movement. A shadow slipping between trees. Perhaps a deer or a traveler. You hesitate. Curiosity rises like warmth in your chest, unfamiliar and sharp, and so you do something unexpected. You step off the path and follow. Your feet know the way well enough. Cross the ditch that marks the edge of your family's land. The morning dew soaks your shoes. You pass the familiar elder bush and the pile of stones your grandfather once stacked to keep out foxes. The woods thicken, but this is not wild forest. It is the edgewood close enough to the village to be familiar, but far enough to feel slightly otherworldly. The trees grow tighter here. The air smells of leaf rot and wet bark. You push past a thicket of brambles, careful not to tear your sleeve. And there, at the base of a large beech tree, something odd, a patch of disturbed earth. Fresh. You crouch down. Someone has been digging here. The dirt is soft, darker than the ground around it. A few wooden boards lie scattered nearby, all weathered, perhaps from a broken cart. You spot what looks like the corner of a cloth sack, just barely exposed. You don't touch it. Instead, you stand and listen again. No sound now. Whatever or whoever was here is gone. But the presence remains, like a warm cup recently emptied. You turn back slowly, making a note of the triot's twisted trunk, the lichen shaped like a crescent moon, the broken stone at its base. You'll come back later. A child calls out, chasing a goose into the road. You tuck the memory of the morning's discovery deep inside you, between thoughts of firewood and barley, between the ache in your knees and the coolness of the wind. Life does not pause. It carries forward, always. And so do you. Later that day, as the sun lifts quietly over the damp thatch and the first chores of the morning begin, your mind is still drawn to that spot beneath the beech tree. You chop wood, slowly, rhythmically. You tend to the goats. You bring in kindling. But the image of the disturbed earth, of the scattered boards and the glint of cloth, returns again and again like a burr, clinging to the inside of your thoughts. You mention nothing to the others, but your steps, throughout the day, circle ever closer to the edgewood. By afternoon, when your hands are free and the cottage is quiet, you slip away again, this time with a purpose. You carry a small cloth bundle, not for the digging, but for the watching. Inside it is a bit of bread, a stub of hard cheese, and a sprig of dried rosemary you picked months ago and tied with string. You don't know why you bring it? Perhaps as an offering? Perhaps as comfort? You step into the woods again. The leaves murmur above. A robin flits across the path. When you reach the beech tree, the place is just as you left it, but now something else lies atop the disturbed soil. A stone, round, dark, recently placed. It rests where the cloth had been partially visible. Now the cloth is gone. You crouch again, heart strangely steady. You do not feel fear exactly, yet more a quiet, pressing curiosity. You don't speak aloud, but your breath hitches. Someone has been here after you, and they've left no mess, no trail. You sit beneath the tree, pressing your back to the bark. The ground is cool, the forest calm. You unwrap the bundle of bread and eat in silence. The rosemary you simply hold, its brittle leaves flaking beneath your thumb. After a time, you hear footsteps, not loud, but certain. A figure moves between the trees. You do not startle. You simply watch. It is old Ellen, the wise woman. She lives past the mill. near the marsh path. Her back is straight, her eyes dark and sharp as a crow's. She says nothing at first. She walks to the tree, kneels beside the stone, and rests her hand upon it. Her fingers linger, then she turns to you. Curious, she says, voice like worn linen, but not yours.
You nod.
There's no need for lies. She stands. You want to ask, but you don't. She knows this. She waits anyway. Finally, you whisper, should I leave it be? She doesn't answer directly. Instead, she presses something into your palm, a small waxed pouch that smells faintly of mint and ash. For dreams, she says. Keep it under your pillow tonight. You'll see more clearly. And with that, she turns and walks away, her feet making no sound on the forest floor. That night, after supper, after the fire is banked, after the last cup is drained, and the last word spoken, you tuck the pouch beneath your pillow. You lie in bed, the weight of the day pressed gently over your body like a woolen sheet. You do not dream at once, but when sleep comes, it is not empty. The night feels different. The fire is lower than usual, casting a dim red glow across the wooden beams. Outside, the wind does not howl, but hums along, steady whisper against the shutters. You lie still, the waxed pouch nestled beneath your pillow, cool and firm against the linen. Sleep takes hold slowly, like a warm tide, and then you are elsewhere. Not startled awake, not falling, not chased, simply shifted. You find yourself standing in your own cottage, but it is no longer night. Pale gray light washes in through the slats. There is no one else inside. Everything is too still. The room carries an old silence. It's not the kind you live with, but the kind that lingers after something has left. Glance down. The rushes covering the floor seem freshly laid, but beneath them, something darker. You kneel, brushing aside the woven grasses with slow fingers. Or beneath the boards is a gap, narrow, clean. You press a hand into it and feel cloth, rough, worn, familiar. You pull gently, and up comes a bundle, bound in leather, stained at the edges. No clasp, no mark, just a knot you instinctively know how to untie. Inside the bundle, parchment folded, several pieces, each blank at first. But slowly letters begin to rise, faint as breath on glass. They form no story, no ledger, no law, just words. Words that seem to come from nowhere and everywhere. She knew the land. He planted in silence. The child hid the truth. The door stayed closed, but the bell rang twice. You trace the ink with your fingertip. It does not smear. Sound rises behind you. The soft crack of a wooden beam, settling of air. You turn. Ellen stands in the doorway of your dream cottage, though her form is blurred, like smoke lit by a far-off lantern. Her eyes meet yours. She does not smile, but she is not unkind. Her voice is clear, though her lips don't move. When the past knocks, don't answer with noise. Just listen and sweep the corners. Then you wake. The fire is cold, the room still. But something is different. You reach beneath the pillow. The pouch is still there, but it is lighter now, almost empty. And on your thumb just faintly, something dark and powdered, like ash or old ink. You lie back. You do not rise just yet. The dream feels less like sleep and more like memory. And in the corners of your vision, you think you see the rushes on the floor shift ever so slightly. Morning comes as it always does, but slower. There's no storm, no cry of alarm, no sudden change in weather. And yet from the moment you stir, something feels expectant, as though the world is pausing, waiting for something just out of sight to make itself known. You rise before the others again. This time you don't rush. Sit on the edge of your straw mattress, rubbing your thumb, the one that still bears a faint smudge from the dream. The pouch under your pillow is lighter, nearly weightless, but you do not check it yet. It seems disrespectful somehow, like asking a question twice. The hearth still holds a few faint embers. Breathe on them gently, feed them dry twigs, coax the fire awake. It crackles softly, softer than usual. Outside, the world is wet from a light rain that passed in the dark. The cobbles of the lane shine. Smoke rises straight up from chimneys, clean and blue. Chickens peck near the fence, unhurried. Everything seems normal, and yet you see things more clearly. The smith's door slightly warped at the bottom. The way your neighbor, the one with the limp, always pauses halfway down the path to his shed. The sound of dripping somewhere, rhythmic just past the garden fence. And when you speak with the baker's son, a boy with hay in his hair and flour on his sleeves, you notice a bruise along his forearm. Faint, yellowed, old, not troubling in itself, but it wasn't there 3 days ago. He speaks cheerfully enough about the loaves that didn't rise, about a dog that chased a rat straight into the bread oven. But he avoids your gaze when he laughs, just slightly. You say nothing? Not now. You just nod, because today is not a day for speaking. Today is a day for noticing. You pass the well and see a leather strap hanging from the bucket's handle tied in a specific way, looped once and knotted. It's a marker. Do you remember that now? A sign that the wise woman left water to settle, for healing or protection. She's been here. Door, you keep walking. Past the thatched roofs, past the hedge of hawthorn where birds always chatter in the late morning, past the stump where a child once swore he saw a fairy in the fog. It's still worn from sitting. You pass the mill, its wheel turning slow in the lazy current of the stream. The sound it makes is comforting, steady, and low, like the heartbeat of the village. And finally, without deciding to, you find yourself at Ellen's path. Her house is crooked, low, sunken into the earth like a resting animal. Herbs grow wild around the door. Bones hang from strings above the lintel small ones. Not frightening, just placed. The door is half open. Inside, it is dim, warm. It smells of rosemary and peat and something metallic. She is not in the front room, but the fire is lit. A piece of linen has been laid out on the table, and on a table word burned into the fabric. Listen, you sit. You do not knock. You do not speak. You just wait. The air hums faintly, like the moment before a storm that never comes. You sit at Ellen's table in the quiet of her low, warm house, hands folded in your lap, listening to the tick of a single drop of water falling somewhere in the rafters. A slow rhythm, not steady, but deliberate, like thought, like waiting. She returns without sound, emerging not from the door behind you, but from the shadows near the hearth. You do not startle. Her presence never arrives like others do, simply appears like fog that rolls in without warning. She carries a coat. It is old, clearly so but not torn. Stitching is strong, the wool dark and sun-faded. It is a man's coat, broad across the back, with a lining patched carefully in places no one would see unless they turned it inside out. She lays it across the table, next to the burned word. This came back to me, she says. Her voice is no louder than wind under a door. Left near the chapel stones, folded, clean, as if it had never left. You do not recognize the coat at first, but something in your chest tightens, as if the air has thinned. She waits. You touch the coat lightly. The wool is cool, not damp, not dry. It holds no particular scent, but the longer you linger, the more your thoughts begin to turn. You remember a man.
Halloween.
Not clearly not his face, not his name, but the impression of him, never staying long. He would trade salted fish from the southern riverbanks for eggs and onions. Spoke little, but never unkindly. His smile when it came was rare and small, like sun on frost. He wore a coat like this, always with the collar turned up even in summer. He stopped appearing some years ago. Because in the village, when someone vanishes quietly, it is not polite to wonder aloud. Absence settles like dust. It layers over names, over footpaths, over memories. But Ellen remembered. She slides a small object from the coat's inner pocket. A button, carved with a spiral at the center. Not bone, not wood, something older, stone perhaps. Slate, she places it before you. It's buried beneath the wrong tree, she says, but not by my hands. You want to ask her what she means, but the question lodges in your throat like smoke. Instead, you say what comes naturally. What should I do? Her answer is simple. Keep listening. She turns then and walks to her hearth. The fire burns low. She stokes it with a stick shaped like a shepherd's crook. Beside the coals, drying on a flat stone, are herbs you do not recognize. Some green, some blackened at the tips. Their scent rises slowly, sharp, sweet, metallic. You rise quietly. You leave without needing to say goodbye. Outside, The village is as it was, sheep bleating in the distance, laughter from the mill, the rhythmic knock of a wooden pestle on stone as someone grinds grain. But inside you, something is turning, slowly like the wheel of a buried cart being pulled from the mud. There are old stories rising again, and your place in them is no longer passive. Not everything that was forgotten stayed buried. Some things waited. The next day, everything appears the same. You rise with the sun slowly, stiff from a restless sleep, and step out into the morning air. The wind carries the smell of baked soil, a scent that always follows a night of light rain. The trees sway quietly beyond the fields. A dog barks once in the distance, then falls silent. The village moves, as it always does, in the slow choreography of survival. You pass your neighbor Maudie near the henhouse. She's muttering about a fox that took a chick in the night. She doesn't look up. She never does. Her hair is tied with a cord of frayed green cloth, the same one she's worn since before the last frost. The thatcher's apprentice lugs a bundle of reeds past you. He nods. You nod back. Neither of you speaks. At the edge of the field you notice something new. Stone round and pale has been set upon the old wooden stile. It wasn't there yesterday. It's smooth with a single slash through the middle, like a mouth closed tight. You pick it up, turn it once in your palm, then place it back exactly where it was. Someone placed it with intention. You leave it alone. Reach the far pasture, where your tasks await. Mending a gap in the low stone wall. Checking the fence for damage. Tossing feed to the goats that call to you like half-wild children. One of them, Meta, the smallest, has found her way into the hedgerow again. You don't scold her. You simply lift her gently, mud-covered hooves and all, and carry her back with a sigh. But as you work, your mind drifts. The coat, the burned cloth, the button with the spiral, the pouch, the tree, the dream. A phrase comes back to you, sweep the corners. You look around, you're alone. So you reach into your pocket and draw out a small cloth scrap. Nothing fancy, just the hem of a shirt too far gone to patch. You begin to wipe the edges of the wall, the base of the fence posts, the cracks between the stones. There's no reason, but you do it anyway. And there, beneath a clump of moss tucked between two rocks, you find something? A scrap of parchment, folded. Protected from the elements by the way the stones were angled, you sit on the wall and open it. It holds no drawing, no map, no list. Just a word, scrawled in ink that's gone soft at the edges. It's barely legible. Hollow. You read it again, then again. The word settles in your chest like cold water. You do not understand it, not yet. But your breath changes. You know, without knowing why, that this word is not meant for everyone. You fold the parchment. You tuck it into your boot. You say nothing, not yet. You walk home slowly, and as you pass the well, you hear someone whisper your name. But when you turn, no one is there. That night, the village sleeps early. The air is thick with moisture, not from rain, but from that peculiar heaviness that arrives in the hours before a storm that never breaks. The hearth flickers with a soft orange glow. You lie on your straw-stuffed mattress, eyes open, watching the play of shadows on the ceiling beams. No one else stirs. And then, just as your mind begins to blur the line between waking and sleep, you hear it. The bell. Not the church bell. That one is familiar, worn, and cracked at the base. This one sounds smaller, lighter, but it echoes not loudly but sharply through the lane outside your home. One clear note, then another, then silence. You rise, wrap yourself in a thick shawl, and step into the dark. The village looks unchanged. Cottages nestle into one another, their shapes soft in the moonlight. Smoke curls gently from one or two chimneys. A dog stirs but does not bark. A gate creaks lazily in the distance. You walk slowly, barefoot, feet brushing against the dew-wet earth. The bell has stopped ringing, but the air still holds its memory, like a vibration in your chest. You follow the feeling. It draws you past the bakery, where the oven stones still hold warmth, past the empty garden behind the apothecary's shed, to a narrow path rarely used that leads toward the chapel ruins just beyond the southern hill. No one goes there much anymore. The chapel collapsed in the bad rains some 15 winters ago. The roof caved in, the altar stones cracked. The village priest moved the services to the newer church across the field, and the old chapel became a place for moss, for birds, and for children to dare one another to enter and whisper names. Tonight, its outline rises before you, fractured and softened by ivy. The bell is there, not hanging from a tower. There's no tower left, but resting in the grass beside the broken archway. A small iron bell with a twist of fraying rope tied to its mouth. It looks newly placed, clean, but it is not new. You remember it. You remember it from your childhood, the way it used to hang beside Ellen's old door before her house was rebuilt. You approach slowly. The bell is cold when you touch it. The rope damp. Beneath it, scratched faintly into the stone, are 3 more spirals nearly identical to the one carved into the button found in the coat. One spiral faces outward, one inward. One points to the ground. You sit beside it, letting your fingers trace the stone, not to solve it, not to understand, but simply to feel it. The wind stirs gently, brushing your hair against your face. You do not take the bell. You do not ring it again. You simply sit. And in the deep stillness of the chapel ruins, a memory arrives unbidden. A face, half remembered. A woman's voice, not Ellen's, whispering a phrase as she wrapped a cloth around your hands during some long-forgotten illness. When you feel hollow, listen for the bell. You don't know who she was, but the memory lands as soft as mist and lingers. The morning after your walk to the chapel ruins, life proceeds as expected, at least on the surface. You sweep the floor. You mend a strap on the water bucket. You help patch a draft along the lower wall of the cottage using moss and cloth. These are ordinary tasks, familiar grounding, and yet today the village feels slightly misaligned. When you pass by the smithy, you notice that Tomlin, the blacksmith's son, stares at you for just a breath too long before turning away. Not fearfully, not curiously, just knowing. At the spinning bench near the green, 2 older women murmur to one another, and the sound fades as you approach. Catch the end of a sentence, like her mother used to. Go, don't ask what they meant. At the well, Maudie drops her bucket and curses as the rope slips. She kneels to retrieve it and says, low but clear, you've been hearing it too, haven't you? You don't answer, because it isn't a question. Later, while gathering eggs near the edge of your small garden, you hear a rustling in the hedgerow. Not a bird, not a breeze. A deliberate sound. You stand still, waiting. A figure emerges thin, cloaked, older than you by many years, yet moving without hesitation. It's Bran, the shepherd, who lives just beyond the hill. Few see him often. He tends his flock far from the village, and most believe he prefers sheep to people. He carries a walking stick carved with symbols you can't read. Its tip is smooth from use. He doesn't greet you. He simply holds out a wrapped bundle, cloth knotted, slightly damp from the morning dew. When you take it, it's heavier than expected. Inside, a small iron chisel, rusted and worn. A smooth stone marked with 3 notches, and a single stalk of dried heather. He says quietly. His voice is low and gravelly. You'll know what to do. Turns before you can speak, and vanishes back into the hedgerow like a shadow slipping beneath water. You take the bundle inside and place it near the hearth, beside the herbs Ellen gave you weeks ago. You sit. The warmth of the fire touches your knees. For a long time, you do not move. Your thoughts drift toward the bell, the coat, the hollow parchment, the remembered voice from long ago. The way even silence seems now to carry meaning. Something is circling, not close enough to touch, but not far enough to ignore. That night, the village sleeps early. The air is thick with moisture. Not from rain, but from that peculiar heaviness that arrives in the hours before a storm that never breaks. The hearth flickers with a soft orange glow. You lie on your straw-stuffed mattress, eyes open, watching the play of shadows on the ceiling beams. No one else stirs. And then just as your mind begins to blur the line between waking and sleep, you hear it. The bell, not the church bell. That one is familiar, worn and cracked at the base. This one sounds smaller, lighter. But it echoes not loudly, but sharply through the lane outside your home. One clear note, then another, then silence. You rise. Wrap yourself in a thick shawl and step into the dark. The village looks unchanged. Cottages nestle into one another, their shapes soft in the moonlight. Smoke curls gently from 1 or 2 chimneys. A dog stirs but does not bark. A gate creaks lazily in the distance. You walk slowly, barefoot, feet brushing against the dew-wet earth. The bell has stopped ringing, but the air still holds its memory. Like a vibration in your chest. You follow the feeling. It draws you past the bakery, where the oven stones still hold warmth, past the empty garden behind the apothecary's shed, into a narrow path rarely used that leads toward the chapel ruins, just beyond the southern hill. No one goes there much anymore. The chapel collapsed in the bad rains some 15 winters ago. The roof caved in, the altar stones cracked. The village priest moved the services to the newer church across the field, and the old chapel became a place for moss, for birds, and for children to dare one another to enter and whisper names. Tonight its outline rises before you, fractured and softened by ivy. The bell is there. It's not hanging from a tower. There's no tower left, but resting in the grass beside the broken archway. A small iron bell with a twist of fraying rope tied to its mouth. It looks newly placed, clean, but it is not new. You remember it. You remember it from your childhood, the way it used to hang beside Ellen's old door before her house was rebuilt. You approach slowly. The bell is cold when you touch it. The rope damp. Beneath it, scratched faintly into the stone, are 3 more spirals, nearly identical to the one carved into the button found in the coat. One spiral faces outward, one inward. One points to the ground. You sit beside it, letting your fingers trace the stone, not to solve it, not to understand, but simply to feel it. The wind stirs gently, brushing your hair against your face. You do not take the bell. You do not ring it again. You simply sit. And in the deep stillness of the chapel ruins, a memory arrives unbidden. A face half-remembered. A woman's voice, not Ellen's, whispering a phrase as she wrapped a cloth around your hands during some long-forgotten illness. When you feel hollow, listen for the bell. You don't know who she was, but the memory lands as soft as mist and lingers. The morning after your walk to the chapel ruins, life proceeds as expected, at least on the surface. You sweep the floor. You mend a strap on the water bucket. You help patch a draft along the lower wall of the cottage using moss and cloth. These are ordinary tasks, familiar grounding, and yet today the village feels slightly misaligned. When you pass by the smithy, you notice that Tomlin, the blacksmith's son, stares at you for just a breath too long before turning away. Not fearfully, not curiously, just knowing. At the spinning bench near the green, 2 older women murmur to one another, and the sound fades as you approach. You catch the end of a sentence, like her mother used to. You don't ask what they meant. At the well. Maudie drops her bucket and curses as the rope slips. She kneels to retrieve it and says, low but clear, "You've been hearing it too, haven't you?" You don't answer, because it isn't a question. Later, while gathering eggs near the edge of your small garden, you hear a rustling in the hedgerow. Not a bird, not a breeze. Deliberate sound. You stand still, waiting. A figure emerges thin, cloaked, older than you by many years, yet moving without hesitation. It's Bran, the shepherd, who lives just beyond the hill. Few see him often. He tends his flock far from the village, and most believe he prefers sheep to people. Carries a walking stick carved with symbols you can't read. Its tip is smooth from use. He doesn't greet you, simply holds out a wrapped bundle. Cloth knotted, slightly damp from the morning dew. When you take it, it's heavier than expected. Inside, a small iron chisel, rusted and worn, smooth stone marked with 3 notches, and a single stalk of dried heather. "Old things waking," he says quietly. His voice is low and gravelly. "She'll know what to do." He turns before you can speak and vanishes back into the hedgerow like a shadow slipping beneath water. You take the bundle inside and place it near the hearth, beside the herbs Ellen gave you weeks ago. You sit. The warmth of the fire touches your knees. For a long time, you do not move. Your thoughts drift toward the bell, the coat, the hollow parchment, the remembered voice from long ago. The way even silence seems now to carry meaning. Something is circling, not close enough to touch, but not far enough to ignore. The moon is nearly full. Not the harvest moon that is past. Not the frost moon that is still to come. This one is simply called the marker's moon, though no one quite remembers why. Even the priest avoids naming it in his sermons. But Ellen, and those like her, prepare quietly when it nears. You feel it not in the sky, but in the way the animals move, as the hens are restless. The goats pick at their feed with half-hearted interest. Even the dog behind the baker's fence howls softly once, then stays silent for hours. At dusk, the air thickens again, not with storm, but with stillness. You spend the early evening wrapping cords around bundles of dried herbs, mugwort, marigold, a few strands of lavender you saved from midsummer. You tie them carefully and hang them above the hearth. The smell rises slowly as the warmth draws out the oils. The air becomes soft and sweet, like old stories whispered in the lap of your grandmother. Outside, someone is passing down the lane. You hear slow steps, the dull thud of a walking stick, and then a knock. You open the door. No one stands there. But at your feet, folded neatly, is a cloth, not new, not freshly washed, but precisely the one you wrapped around your hands during the illness years ago. The same cloth from your dream, stitching along the edge confirms it. A crooked thread of red, uneven but determined. You pick it up. It's warm, though the air is cold. You turn it over once. It's tucked inside, barely visible, as a small wooden carving of the marker's moon. A perfect circle, notched once, with a thread of silver pressed into its edge. That night, the village glows silver under the full moon. The sky is so clear it feels fragile, like glass. You can see every star, every cloudless seam of dark. You walk alone, past the hedge, down the path that leads away from the fields and toward the chapel ruins. You are not the only one. Small figures move ahead of you, shrouded in cloaks, quiet, respectful. They carry no torches. They do not speak. They walk slowly, as if retracing steps once taken long ago. You follow them, not too close. At the chapel, a single fire burns, set not within the stone walls, but just outside them, in a shallow hollow dug long ago. When burials were done by hand and prayers said by stars, no one leads, no one directs. The villagers form a loose circle, some standing, some seated on stones, all watching the fire, and then, from somewhere behind, a bell rings. Just once, and all heads bow. Not in worship, not in fear, but in memory. You do the same. The fire crackles. Someone tosses in a bundle of herbs. The scent rises, pungent and earthy. You close your eyes. And though no one speaks aloud, the stillness is full of meaning. Stories flicker across faces. Not spoken, remembered. The bell does not ring again. Eventually, one by one, the villagers drift back into the night. You stay behind, near the fire, staring into the coals. You press the small wooden moon in your hand and feel, not fear, but something older, belonging you had not known you'd lost. The sun rises without announcement. There is no rooster's crow, no tolling bell, no clatter of buckets on stone. Only light slipping through the low windows of your cottage and thin. Golden beams, catching on the dust motes that drift lazily through the air. You sit up slowly. The dream has not left you. It clings to the edges of your waking mind like damp linen on skin, present, insistent, quiet. You remember the door? The room of humble objects? The page? The words? We do not guard what is secret. We guard what is forgotten. Outside, the village is beginning its day. A child laughs in the distance. The blacksmith's hammer begins its rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. And yet, beneath it all, there's a stillness, like the air before snow. You rise, wash your face, and light a small flame in the hearth. The fire takes easily today. It's as if the wood was waiting for you. You step out into the lane, and there it is waiting. A line of white stones laid in a curve along the path, starting just beyond your doorstep and leading eastward, away from the village center. The stones are smooth, like river stones, but dry, each one marked with a faint trace of ash across its surface. You glance up and down the lane. No one is watching, but someone placed them. You follow? The path winds softly between familiar places: the weaver's garden, the worn fence near the tannery, the abandoned well behind the old grain shed. These places have always been there, but you've never walked them in this order. There is something comforting in it, like walking a song in steps. Eventually, the stones lead you to the willow tree near the edge of the field. The same one you passed many times as a child, always without thought. Today, you see what you had not seen before. Beneath its hanging branches is a patch of bare earth, soft, smooth, undisturbed. Beside it, another bundle, wrapped in linen, weighted with a small stone. You kneel. You brush the earth with your fingers first. Not to dig, but to feel. Lap. Loose. You pick up the bundle and open it slowly. Inside, there is a scrap of old parchment with two things written, side by side. 1, the spindle turns where the thread was broken. 2, a map, but not of the village, not as it is. It shows the paths as they might have been generations ago. Crooked fences, fields now vanished, stream that no longer flows. At the center, a mark, 3 spirals. You trace it with your fingertip. The mark is not placed at the chapel, or at Ellen's hut, or at the moss wall. It lies beneath the field you've always known as Hollow End, a place of no particular meaning. Just another patch of land the sheep pass through, till now. You wait until evening, not out of fear, not out of hesitation, because some places are meant to be visited under the hush of dusk. Hollow End is not far. A gentle slope at the village's outer edge, where sheep graze and birds wheel above. You've passed it hundreds of times without thinking. Its name never struck you as strange until now. But tonight, walking toward it, you feel its weight. Not heavy, not dark, just held, like a pause that never quite finished. The light dims gently as you cross the low pasture. Clouds drift lazily overhead. Insects hum somewhere in the grass. The path is familiar, but now the curve of the land feels deliberate, as if someone shaped it for a purpose long ago. You reach the spot marked on the old map. There's no marker, no ruin, no shrine. Just a circle of wildflowers, white and yellow and in the center. A smooth patch of earth slightly sunken, like something once buried there has slowly collapsed inward. You kneel. You place a hand on the ground. It's warmer than it should be. And then, without instruction, you begin to clear it. Not to dig deep, just enough to disturb the top layer. Just enough to wake something. The soil gives easily. Within minutes, your fingers find it. Stone. Flat. Smooth. Carved. You brush it free. There's moss. Dry roots. But beneath, yes, there it is. Spiral. The same 3 spirals you've seen before. One inward. Outward. Outward. But now they are surrounded by a ring of smaller marks dozens of tiny lines, etched around the outer edge like the teeth of a gear. And between them, a word. You whisper it aloud without meaning to. Midden. The word tastes old. It sits on your tongue like cool ash. Press your fingers to the center of the stone where the spirals meet. Nothing happens, yet everything does. The sound of wind falls silent. The air changes, not colder, not warmer. Just listening. You sit beside the stone until the last of the light fades. No one comes. No one speaks. But when you stand to leave, you feel it in your bones. This was once a doorway. And perhaps it still is. You return in the dark. The moon is late to rise, and the stars are faint like memories nearly gone. The village is nearly silent as you pass through it. No windows glow, no feet shuffle along the lanes. Except one. Ellen's door is open. Only slightly. Just enough that the light from her hearth spills in a narrow line across the earth outside, golden and flickering. You do not knock. You step in without sound. She is seated in her chair by the fire. Her hands are still, folded over a worn shawl. She does not look up, but she speaks. The earth spoke to you, didn't it? You do not answer. She does not need it. She nods slowly once. I thought it might. You sit in the stool opposite her. The fire crackles between you soft and slow. On the table beside her lies a bundle of dried lavender, a small bowl of salt, and an unfamiliar book with no title on its cover. It is bound in dark leather, edges frayed, corners softened by years of turning. She picks up the salt and sprinkles a pinch into the fire. The flames hissed briefly, then settle. Not everything was buried, she says. Some things were simply left, until someone remembered how to see them. You place the old map on the table. Ellen glances at it, then closes her eyes. My grandmother had one like that. She kept it in a drawer wrapped in wool. Said it was nothing but stories. But every time someone was born, she'd take it out and whisper over it. You wait. The silence stretches long, but not uncomfortable. Then softly. Hollow End was never just a field. Long ago, it was the place where they brought the objects that couldn't be destroyed. Things too bound to the people, too full of memory. They placed them there beneath the spirals and let the earth forget them. Until it didn't. You lean forward, Ellen's eyes are distant now, seeing something older. The coat, the bell, the stone.
Oh, the name.
Carved into cloth, all pieces.
Oh.
She looks at you, then really looks. You've been carrying them, haven't you? You know. She smiles, but it is a small, tired thing. Then it's begun. You ask her what that means. She looks into the fire and speaks not an answer, but a thread. When the spirals turn, the village remembers. Not all at once, not loudly, but like roots waking beneath frost. She reaches into her shawl and draws out something wrapped in linen. She offers it to you. Inside there is a key, small iron. The handle shaped like 3 interlocking spirals. You'll know where it fits, but not yet. Let the story shape itself. Outside, the wind has risen slightly. The trees shiver. The lane lies quiet. The village dreams with you among it, but not asleep. In the days that follow, the village breathes as it always has. The forge rings. The bread rises. The children laugh and scatter stones across the green. Rain comes and leaves. The paths grow muddy, then dry again. But now, something's different. Not in the way that strangers would notice. But to those who listen, to those who look, there is a gentle bending in the pattern. You notice it in the small things. Tomlin, the blacksmith's son, now wears a piece of twisted iron on a cord around his neck. You've never seen it before? It looks like a spiral that once unfurled, then curled back upon itself. He catches you glancing at it once. He says nothing, but he does not look away. Maudie, old and sharp as frost, hums when she works now, a tune you recognize but cannot name. You once heard Ellen hum the same one. You say nothing. Even the goats seem quieter near Hollow End. They graze, but do not wander far. And every evening, one of the village children different, each day leaves a small object at the base of the willow tree. A feather, bit of ribbon, a folded leaf. No one tells them to do it. It simply happens. One morning, you wake to find something tucked inside your doorframe. A dried apple slice, pierced by a needle and thread. A charm. You remember this from your grandmother's house? She used to hang one over the threshold every winter. For memory, for protection, or perhaps just because someone had taught her to do it and she'd never thought to stop. You leave it where it is. That same day when you visit Ellen, she does not open the door. Instead, you find a basket waiting on the step. Inside there is a candle made of tallow and beeswax, etched faintly with lines you don't quite understand. A pouch of crushed lavender and bark. And a folded note that says, "Tonight, if the key feels warm, follow it. Go about your day." You fix a gate. You collect herbs. You mend a rip in your sleeve. These things still matter. Life does not pause for the weight of meaning, but you check the pouch again and again. And by evening, when the wind stills and the moon begins to rise, you place your hand near the key on. Yes, it is warm, not hot. It's not glowing, just warm enough to feel alive. That night, as the rest of the village sleeps, you walk the outer paths along the hedgerow, past the stream, behind the tannery ruins. You do not know where you are going. The key does. It shifts in your hand with each turn. Warmer near a fork in the path, cooler near the old grainstones, until finally you reach the slope behind the moss wall, where a low line of stones outlines what once might have been a foundation. Half buried in the earth is a wooden hatch. You would have missed it entirely except for the spiral carved into the hinge. You kneel. You press the key to the lock, turns without sound, and the hatch lifts. Beneath the stone steps, descending, swallowed by dark, but not the cold kind of dark. This darkness feels remembered. You take one breath, then another, and then quietly, without ceremony, you step inside. The air shifts the moment you cross the threshold. It is cool, but not cold, still but not dead. There is life in this air-old life, root deep in silence thick. The steps are stone, worn smooth by feet that walked them long before yours. You move carefully, candle in hand, each footfall cushioned by the weight of centuries pressing down above. The narrow passage curves slightly as you descend, not straight, never straight. It winds, like the spiral carved into your key, like the rhythm of a story told without ending. The walls are damp in places. You run your hand along them and feel the faint ridges of symbols barely visible, but undeniably there. Eventually, the passage widens. It opens into a chamber, small, circular, perfectly still, and in its center, a pedestal of rough-hewn stone. On the pedestal sits a box. Wooden, bound with iron. No lock, no seal. You approach. The box is not new, but it is not rotting. It has been cared for, though by whom you cannot guess. Dust covers its surface, but no mold, no rust. It's only time you lift the lid. Inside there are layers. Each layer holds a single object. The topmost is a spindle, its thread long unraveled. The wood is dark, and the grain is split in one place, but it still carries the scent of lavender. Beneath it, a folded cloth cream, edged with red thread, just like yours. This one is stitched with a name, but the thread is faded. You can only make out the first letter, E, and beneath the cloth, parchment. Not a letter, a list. The same 5 lines you've seen before, but now a 6th has been added, dink fresher, but still familiar. The bell was rung twice. The hollow is remembered. The coat was returned. The word is found. The mark waits. The steps have begun. You lower the list gently back into the box. There is no fear in this place. No answers either. Only a sense that you are not the first, and that what you are doing now has been done before and will be again. You sit on the stone floor, the candle flickering beside you. Your thoughts drift not backward, not forward, but downward. Into the roots, into the soil, to the quiet where stories sleep. You breathe, you listen. And in the hush of that buried room, you realize this is not the end of a mystery. This is its beginning. You do not rush your return. The path back up the stone stairway is the same, but now it feels different. Less like leaving, more like carrying something with you. The candle has burned low, but its flame holds steady. Its light dances across the walls as you ascend, revealing again those quiet carvings, the ones your fingers brushed on the way down. This time you recognize a few. A spiral, a spindle, a bell, a mark that might be a tree, or a flame, or a word long since forgotten. At the top, you replace the hatch carefully. The key fits again, as though it never left its place. You step into night air? The stars are brighter than you remember. They stretch like soft embroidery across the sky, stitched into the blackness by a patient hand. The village lies still, all windows dark. But in the distance, across the green, you see one shapelin, standing silently at her doorway. She does not wave, she does not speak, but you know that she knows. You raise the candle slightly, just a few inches off your chest. She nods, not a greeting, a recognition. The days that follow return to routine. You tend your garden, you patch a roof, you trade a few bundles of time for new thread at the green. But everywhere in the corners and creases of the village, the shift continues. You notice a girl tracing spirals in the mud with her fingertip as she waits for her father at the smithy. You see Maudie hang a bundle of ash branches on her doorknot, for weather, not for luck, but as if marking something. And once when you stop by the old chapel ruins, you find someone has cleared the leaves from the stone steps. The air there smells faintly of fennel and smoke. You speak to no one of the box, or the spindle, or the list. You don't need to. Some knowledge does not require speech to grow. Instead, it settles in the rhythm of the village itself. The pace of footsteps. The way candles are lit a little earlier now. The way hands linger over certain tools, pause at certain doorways. You begin to keep the key close, worn on a cord around your neck, tucked beneath your tunic. Not to protect it, but to remind you. And some nights when the wind is still and the stars are thick, you dream again of the doorway in the field, the one that never existed and now exists more than ever. Each time, it is slightly different. Each time, you wake with a stronger sense of belonging, not just to the village, but to the rhythm underneath it, the one that pulses beneath stone, soil, and silence. The seasons begin to shift. Not in sudden gusts or clattering storms, but in the hush between mornings when the light stretches longer across the eastern fields. The dew clings a little thicker to the grass. There is no declaration, no heralding of the new season, no painted banners or shouted news. Just a subtle change in the way bread rises, how wool smells after drying in the sun, how the crows gather on the chapel roof before dusk. Then one morning, without planning, someone leaves a basket at the base of the old village treetha, one near the green where the lantern is hung during long nights. Inside the basket there are apples, sprigs of mint, a pair of old scissors bound in red ribbon. No note, no name. By noon, others have begun to do the same. Dried barley sheaves, a half-knitted sock, comb with missing teeth, a smooth stone painted with spirals. It is not a festival, but it becomes one. You hear someone call it thread turn, a name you don't remember hearing before, but that feels older than any you've known. When you ask Ellen, she only smiles. It remembers itself when it's time, she says. And indeed, the village seems to move in tandem with something unseen, something just behind the veil of the ordinary. The children are sent into the woods not far, just past the hedgerow, to gather things that once held meaning. Fallen feathers, pieces of cracked pottery, ribbon from trees where old games were played. They return with dirt-streaked fingers and eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. In the evening, fires are lit in a loose circle, not for warmth, but for watching. No one performs. No stories are told aloud. But small things happen at the edge of the light. An old woman humming a song that makes the baker's wife cry without knowing why. A young boy laying 3 stones in a triangle, then stepping back and bowing gently to them. A stranger no one knows from which farm leaving a bundle of rosemary and tin buttons at the center of the green, then walking away without a word. And no one asks questions. Because thread turn is not for answers. It is for memory. For the turning of what was lost back into the breath of now. For letting the past touch the present, not to claim it, but to remind it. That night, as the fires burn low, and the children sleep in laps and arms and straw-lined corners, you walk the green alone. Near the tree, you find a cloth folded carefully around a spindle. Not yours, but very much like yours. Beneath it there is a note, written in the same hand as the others. One stitch returns another. One thread knows its way back. When the water stills, the reflection deepens. You fold the cloth and place it in your pouch. You do not speak, you do not sleep. You simply sit near the tree until dawn, feeling the earth hum quietly beneath you. Like a story almost, but not quite finished. It begins with a breeze. One of those soft turning winds that carries the scent of both damp leaves and sun-warmed bark, the kind that rustles gently through hedgerows without disturbing the birds. You feel it tug at your sleeve as you walk past the edge of Hollow End. It is not strong, not insistent. The path you take is not one worn by many. It curves behind the slope near the moss wall and slips quietly into the woods between beeches and oaks older than memory, where light dapples through the canopy like coins dropped from a forgotten purse. You walk without thought, and not without direction. Each step feels familiar, though you've not walked this way in years. Not since childhood games. Not since berry-picking afternoons and small adventures with names now faded from the edge of your tongue. And then, without transition, you arrive. A clearing, round, gently sloped, encircled by yew and ash. You pause. It is not marked, not tended, no shrine, no stones. No signs, and yet the shape of it is unmistakable. The same spiral pattern found on the parchment. The same curves you traced with your fingertip in the candlelit hush of the underground chamber. Here, the spiral is not carved, it is grown. Low brush and ivy have overrun much of it, but you see the line, how the undergrowth has given way in places, how tufts of moss seem to curl just slightly in alignment, how mushrooms grow in a slow arc near the southern edge. You step to the center. Now, the ground beneath your feet is soft, not muddy, but damp, like something once buried lies just beneath. You kneel not to dig, not to disturb, but to listen. What you hear is not sound, but space. A breath held, a pause stretched long, as though this place has been waiting, not for rescue, not for awakening, simply to be seen again. You remove the cloth from your pouch, the one left for you near the tree during thread turn. You lay it gently on the ground. Then the spindle. Then the candle stub. Then, after a long moment of stillness, the key. You do not speak. But you feel something shift in the air around you. A kind of recognition. Not loud. It's not grand. Just the faint sense of an eye opening in the soil beneath your hand. The wind circles once through the trees. You close your eyes. And in the darkness, there between blinks, between breaths you feel a thread tighten. Not a snare, a connection. As if, in laying down those objects, you have completed a circuit. And now, something far older, far quieter, has begun to hum again, return from the clearing at dusk. No one sees you come back, or if they do not speak of it. The lanes are quiet, save for the soft clink of pots being stacked and the hush of firewood being arranged for the night ahead. Your hands still carry the scent of moss and old bark. Your fingertips are faintly green. You do not wash them. Back in your cottage, everything is as you left it. The spindle lies on the shelf. The candle wick has curled into itself. And the pouch of herbs once nearly empty is now strangely full again. You don't remember replenishing it. You say nothing. Because now, silence is not absence. It is the language of acknowledgement. The next morning, something odd happens. You visit the weaver's house, hoping to trade a bundle of time for wool thread. When you arrive, she isn't home, but the door is ajar. Inside, everything is in order. Spindles arranged, cloth folded. A warm stone left on the chair, as though someone had just stood up. And sitting neatly on the threshold, as though placed just for you, is a bundle of thread in the exact shade you needed. You leave the time anyway. You say nothing. Later, near the well, you pass a group of children playing. They've arranged small stones in a spiral. In the center is a piece of wood shaped like a bell. One of the girls is singing not a rhyme from any current song, but a low, lilting tune you know from your dreams. She sings. When the thread was cut, the stone still new. It waited in soil beneath the dew. You stop. None of the other children react as if this is unusual. But one, a boy no older than 6, looks up at you and says, "We didn't learn it, we just remembered." Then he goes back to the game. You walk through the village with soft steps. A door that has long stayed shut near the tannery now swings slightly open in the breeze. You peer inside. Dust. Yes, but also a small table laid with 3 stones in a triangle, and a feather resting in the center. A stillness you recognize. You begin to see signs everywhere. A circle of ash around a tree stump. A line of rosemary tucked under someone's windowsill. A mark carved faintly into a chair leg at the blacksmith's. A woman drawing water from the well and whispering to it before lifting the bucket. No one claims these actions. No one explains them. But no one seems surprised. The village is not waking up. It is remembering how to sleep while still moving. How to live in rhythm with the soil beneath it. That night, when you light your candle, the flame flickers 3 times in quick succession, then steadies. You sit by the hearth, key in hand, and for the first time, you understand this is not your story. You are simply the next one to carry the thread. It is a quiet market day. The morning mist hangs low across the green, turning every silhouette into something slightly blurred people. Animals, carts, trees, all smudged gently at the edges, like a memory softened by time. You are returning from the baker's stall, a still warm loaf tucked under your arm, when you see him. A man. Thin, wiry, layered in patched clothing, the color of slate and fallen oak leaves. His boots are wrapped in cloth, more for holding them together than for warmth. His hair is gray in streaks, not from age, but from too many nights under indifferent skies. He pulls a small handcart behind him, barely more than a box on wheels, and it jangles faintly with every step. You stop? Because jangling isn't a common sound in your village, and certainly not in late autumn. He notices you before you speak. He smiles too quickly, like someone used to doors being shut, and is surprised when they open. "Good day," he says. "Is this village called Elmbridge?" You nod slowly. He exhales, relieved. "Didn't think it'd still be here." Sets up near the old fountain what's left of it. A low stone ring, dry most of the year. No one minds him being there, but no one lingers long either, except you. His cart is filled with objects. Not the kind that glint and shine, but the kind that seem stained with story. A broken mirror, backed in old green velvet. A music box with no key. A pewter cup etched with spirals. A bundle of pages stitched together with red thread. A child's shoe. Bell. But not a ringing bell. A mute one, its tongue removed. You lift it gently. He watches you. They never ring, he says. But people always want to carry them. Funny, isn't it? You place it back. He reaches into a worn leather pouch at his side and pulls out a small stone flat with something carved into it. He holds it up to the light. A triple spiral, exactly like yours. You meet his eyes. Where did you get that? The smile shifts. Less easy, more real. Everywhere. He asks questions no one else asks. To the baker, do your ovens still smoke at midsummer? To the weaver, do you still bury broken needles at the crossing? To the child near the forge, do you dream about the place with no roof? They don't answer him, not because they don't know, but because they are not supposed to remember that they know. But you remember. So when he turns to you at dusk, when the others have gone indoors and the mist has begun to settle again, he speaks without riddles. You opened it, didn't you? You do not ask what, because the question already knows the answer. You simply nod. He hands you the carved stone. This one isn't for sale, he says. It's for exchange. You reach into your pouch. You offer him the cloth with your initials stitched faintly at the corner. He accepts it. We're not supposed to keep anything forever, he says. It's just long enough to know what it means. That night, he disappears, his cart gone, his bell left hanging from the old fountain by a piece of red thread. You take it, and though it makes no sound, you feel the vibration of its ringing in your chest, as if something once muted has begun to speak again, quietly, patiently. The moss wall waits as it always has, low leaning, nestled at the far end of the village where trees thicken and the fog comes earliest. It is not remarkable to most just old stones, layered and patched where time has taken bites, but you've passed it enough to know when something changes. This morning, the change is quiet but clear. Where moss once spread loosely, without pattern, it now follows form, not precise, not drawn, but shaped by intent, the way vines curl towards sun and roots reach toward water. You kneel before it, letting your eyes adjust, and then you see them, spirals, dozens of them, not carved, not painted, grown. Outlines formed in pale lichen. Arcs of darker moss shaped into curves and crescents. At first, they seem random, but as your gaze lingers, the arrangement becomes familiar, a pattern you've seen on the map found beneath hollow end. You pull that old parchment from your pouch. Hold it up. Compare. Yes, it's not an exact replica, but it echoes the same flow-curved paths, 3 central turns, and the small offshoot marked only by a faded X on the parchment. Now mirrored here on the moss wall is a lichen-lined triangle. You reach out to touch it. The wall is damp, cool, and faintly trembling, as though the stone itself is remembering something. You trace the path from spiral to triangle. There's a gap between them, just 3 missing stones in the wall. Never noticed before. But looking now, that gap feels intentional. Beyond it, bramble. But behind the bramble, hidden in shade, something glints. Not metal, not bright, but something polished by time. You push through the brush gently, and there it is. A flat stone slab buried into the slope behind the wall. Covered with ivy, you pull it back, slowly, reverently. Beneath the growth, carvings a map, a more complete one. Unlike the folded parchment from the box, this one includes places the current village has no name for. A hill where there is now only hollow field. A river bend now dried and lost to underbrush. And in the center, beneath 3 spirals carved in relief, a single word. Remnant. You don't recognize it, but it feels known. You sketch the symbols onto a scrap of paper and replace the ivy gently. You step back through the moss wall. The spirals are already fading slightly. Lichen responds not to attention, but to time. Still, the path it revealed is now etched somewhere deeper in the turning of your thoughts, in the memory of your fingertips. Later that night, you sit by your hearth with the bell, the key, and the stone the tinker gave you. You arrange them into a triangle, not for ritual, not for reason, just to see. And you notice something. When the firelight hits them just right, the shadow between them curls into a single spiral, drawn not in substance, but in absence. You breathe in, you close your eyes, and the wall hums behind your eyelids like it's still there. You followed the old map at first light. Not the one from the parchment, but the carving you traced at the moss wall, with the spiral at its center and the unfamiliar word, remnant. The path is not marked, but your feet seem to remember it even if your mind hesitates. The trees are dense at first, not dark, just deeply alive. Their branches touch overhead like old friends in quiet conversation. Leaves shift with every step you take, and birds call out only when you pass, as if acknowledging something familiar but long unused. You reach a gentle rise of slope, barely noticeable, unless you've walked long enough to feel the earth shift beneath you. At the top, the world opens. An abandoned grove, circular, unfenced, cradled by stone and ash trees, too perfect in shape to be an accident, too untouched to be known by the village anymore. At its center stands a single standing stone, no taller than your shoulder, flecked with lichen and worn by centuries of rain and silence. Round it, grass grows evenly, as if carefully trimmed by time itself. You approach. Carved into the standing stone is a shallow spiral, familiar now, but this one ends. It does not loop endlessly. It narrows to a point. And at the very center, one word. Thale. You whisper it, Thale. The wind answers, not loudly, not with rustling or stirring, but with an absence of sound, a pocket of stillness that settles around your shoulders like a shawl. As if, in speaking the name aloud, something lost has finally been acknowledged again. You step closer and notice small depressions in the earth around the stone once footprints, now softened. As if others stood here before you, whispering names in the hush of morning. You kneel, place your hand on the stone. It is warm not from sun, but from recognition. You do not know who or what Thale was. A person, a title, or a moment? But you know with a certainty deeper than language that this place was once sacred, not because it was grand, but because it was used. Used for remembering. For saying things aloud no one else would carry. For releasing burdens into the wind and letting the grove catch them. You stay there until the sun crests fully above the trees. Birdsong begins again. Not loud, not new. Just resumed. You rise and leave a simple offering, the small stone the tinker gave you. You do not know what it means, but you trust that it will find meaning here. As you walk away, you feel a gentle pull behind your ribs, like the spiral carved into the stone has not ended at all, but merely turned inward. Into you. Ellen is waiting before you knock. She opens the door before your hand touches the frame. No surprise in her eyes, just a quiet knowing, worn soft by age and use. She gestures you inside. The kettle is already over the fire, hissing gently. On the table, 2 cups, a sprig of sage, and a folded square of linen you haven't seen before. It bears a familiar stitch 3 spirals bound in red thread. You sit without a word. She pours the tea, doesn't drink, just wraps her hands around the cup and watches the fire. Then, Thale, she says, as if completing your unspoken sentence. You nod. You went to the grove. Another nod. She sighs not in worry, but in memory. They were the last to speak, before silence came. You look at her. She stares into the flame and begins not loudly, not clearly, but steadily, like a memory drawn gently from water. Thale wasn't their birth name. That was left behind like most things. But Thale was what they were called when they began to hear the soil. When the bell stopped ringing, when the map faded and Hollow End was sealed. You don't interrupt, she continues. They weren't a leader, not really. Just the one who stayed after the others had turned away. They listened longer, waited deeper. And when the time came, they stood in the grove and gave their own name to the wind. You frown. What does that mean, you ask? Ellen finally looks at Ureli looks. And for a moment, you see the weight she carries. Not as a burden, but as a thread wound carefully through her years. It means they asked the land to remember them, entirely, not as a tale, not as a shadow, but as someone willing to be named into the soil. You stare into your tea. It ripples slightly, not from breath, from something else. After Thale, the memory faded, she says, not because it was lost, but because it was sleeping. It always sleeps between rememberings. She reaches for the folded cloth on the table, unwraps it. Inside, there is a sliver of stone, spiral carved. Familiar in pattern, but this one is cracked. She places it in your hand. This was theirs, she says, and now it's yours. Shh. You run your thumb over the spiral. The crack runs through the center like lightning in frozen time. You do not know what it is, not yet. But it feels alive, like something caught mid-sentence. Ellen rises. The village is stirring. You felt it. It knows the thread's been picked up again. You nod. So what now? She pauses at the door. Now, she says, the name waits. Not to be spoken again, but to be answered. She leaves you with the fire, the stone, and the slow hum of understanding blooming quietly in your chest. It begins without sound, a shift in the stillness, a soft breath beneath the usual hum of morning, a change in the light that no one remarks upon, but all seem to feel. You wake earlier than usual, not by alarm, but by awareness. There is no wind, no birdsong, just the sensation that something has returned. When you step outside, you notice it immediately. The bell, the one the tinker left hanging from the dry stone fountain, has been moved. Not far, just from the fountain to the center of the green, resting upright on the ground, its red thread loop coiled neatly beside it, as if placed there by a careful hand, a hand that no one saw. You approach slowly. It makes no sound, still mute, still whole, but it hums faintly when your shadow passes over it. The children arrive first without being called, without games or chatter. They form a wide, loose circle around the bell, silent, still, as if rehearsed, though no practice has occurred. Then the elders, one by one. Maudie with her bundle of rosemary, her back bent but her eyes sharp. The blacksmith with soot still on his apron, wiping his hands on his sleeves, watching the bell with wary respect. A few quiet couples from the eastern edge of the village, Ellen last, holding a pouch stitched in gray wool, the spiral on it faint but unmistakable. No one speaks, because there is nothing to say. They are not gathering for a festival, not for a sermon, not even for remembrance. They are responding to something old, something planted long ago, something that is now, at last, answered back. You stand just outside the circle, unsure of your place. Then a child, the same one who traced spirals in the dirt weeks ago, walks to you and holds out their hand. In it there is a stone, flat, spiral, carved. Not one of yours, but familiar. You take it. The child nods and returns to the circle as if delivering a message not theirs to keep. And then the bell hums again, still mute, still unmoved. But this time, every face turns to you, not in expectation, bias, not in demand, but in quiet, steady recognition. It is your turn, not to lead, not to explain, but to stand in the center, to place your stone beside the bell, to add your breath to the hush that holds the village together. You do. The moment passes like a breeze, not dramatic, not loud, but the spiral in your palm warms as it touches the ground. And for the first time, the bell does not ring, but it resonates. A feeling in the bones, a pressure behind the eyes, a gentle weight in the center of the chest. The bell remembers, and so does the village. Of course, let us walk gently into a village now, change not all at once, but stitch by subtle stitch, where even the dreams begin to take on the shape of something remembered. In the days that follow, no one speaks of the bell, not out loud, not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't. Things that matter deeply often live better in silence. Life resumes, or appears to. The forge still clinks. The baker still rises before dawn. Children still run, though now their paths seem to form loops and spirals in the dust without thinking. But something underneath has shifted. You feel it first in your dreams. They no longer follow the strange flickering shapes of sleep. Now they move with the rhythm of your days. In one you are weaving, but not with thread with light. In another, you walk the fields, and the plants bow slightly as you pass, as if recognizing a name you don't recall offering. At each dream there is a presence, not a figure, not a voice, just a knowing that walks beside you. You wake rested, not light but anchored, the way one feels when the right book closes on the right page. In the waking world, the land begins to change quietly, persistently. The rosemary bush behind Maudie's cottage blooms a second time, though the season says it shouldn't. At the edge of the well, where ivy once tangled thick, now there is a smooth patch of earth shaped faintly like an open palm. And by the moss wall, Once still, you notice movement, not the moss itself, but beneath it. The stone beneath seems to breathe, not literally, but in the way shadows cling longer now, the way your eye is drawn to certain shapes, as if the wall wants to be seen, not glanced at. The weaver tells you her loom hums at night. The smith says one of his tools, the oldest, rusted, fell clean from the wall without sound and now shines with no polishing. A girl at the far end of the village wakes one morning speaking a name she says she heard in a dream. Thale, she whispers, at breakfast. They're still listening. Her mother says nothing, just closes her eyes once and places her hand over the child's. You begin to write things down, not to keep them, but to honor them. Patterns you see, words that return, symbols on bark.
Echoes.
In water. You're not a chronicler. You're a thread keeper now. And threads you've learned do not always run in straight lines. Some loop, some return. Some not at the exact moment they're meant to unravel. And some continue, like this one, begins as the sun leans low behind the western hill. Not quite sunset, just the moment before. When shadows grow long and everything seems briefly suspended, caught between day's ending and night's arrival, the wind moves gently through the village, not strong, not cold, just enough to ripple leaves and stir thatch, enough to hum. First you think it's nothing more than wind through hollow wood, the breath of the evening touching eaves and shutters, but the pattern catches your ear. A phrase, for notes, then a pause, and again soft, slow lulling. The sound does not come from one place. It travels curling through the trees, slipping down the chimney pots, weaving through hedgerows and fence posts. The wind carries it like a story passed hand to hand. You stop where you are, half-folded laundry in your arms, and just listen. And then, from across the lane, another voice joins in. Not the wind. A child, humming. Then two more. A woman at her garden gate begins to hum the same tune. Her fingers move in time with it, tying a knot of twine around a bundle of herbs, as if she's done this before. The man repairing a boot pauses, listens, then joins in quietly, his deep voice grounding the higher tones. You do not remember this melody, yet you know it. It is not joyous, not sad. It's just steady, balanced, like walking between furrows, like breathing through dusk, like stirring something warm and old in a pot that has always been on the fire. You close your eyes and let the sound move through you. It is not a song for performance. It has no words, no verses, only the rhythm of remembering, only the feeling of something just out of reach returning, not to be caught, but to be felt again. And though it fades with the last of the light, though no one speaks of it over supper, you find yourself humming it again as you lay your head to rest. And outside, just for a moment longer, the wind finishes the phrase you forgot. Certainly, let us walk together now into the overgrown quiet, where time lies folded under grass, and the earth listens for footsteps it once knew. You wake before dawn, the melody still echoing behind your ribs. Not a sound, now just the faint weight of it, like something placed gently in your memory's pocket. You rise, pull on your cloak and step outside. While the sky is still dark enough to feel velvet soft, there is a pull today, not urgent, not loud. Just a tug at the edge of your awareness, the same way the tide touches the shore, not to claim it, but to remind it of its place in the rhythm. You follow the path behind the baker's house, where the hedgerow breaks unevenly. Few go this way, too many brambles, too much nettle, no clear reason to pass. But today, the way feels softened, as if the brambles have leaned aside just enough, as if they've remembered once letting people through. Now you step carefully. Beyond the brush, the ground opens into a wide, gently sloping space. The old threshing yard. You had almost forgotten it existed. Once used for separating grain from chaff, now silent, forgotten by most, but not empty. Beneath the tall grass and ivy vines, you see them. Stones, worn flat, set deep into the soil in no particular pattern at first glance. You kneel and brush the moss from one. They're carved faintly. A spiral, not large, not new. You clear a second stone, then a third. And slowly, as you uncover them, you begin to see it. A path, not a straight one, but a curved spiral, wide and deliberate. Each stone a step. Each step a beat in a slow, careful dance. You stand. And without knowing why, your feet find the rhythm step. Pause, step, breathe, turn, step again. You're walking the same pattern the wind sang last night. The same one the children hummed. The same one etched into the bell's shadow. Your steps feel light, but your chest feels full, like something rising slowly, not to overflow, but to settle. And then, midway through the spiral, you stop. Not by decision, but because the earth feels different, you look down. The grass here is thin, and beneath it lies a different stone rounder, darker. A single word carved into it, worn to the edge of legibility. You lean closer, kept nothing more. But in your mind, the word sounds like a sentence. Kept, not hidden. Kept, not claimed. Kept, because the thread waits for return. You finish walking the spiral. As you step back into the cool morning air, the sun breaks across the horizon, spilling light over the yard. It glints on the stones, just for a moment, making each one shine as if remembering footsteps from long ago. And though no one else is there, you do not feel alone. The yard has held space for this, and now that space has been filled again quietly, as all important things are, of course. Let us return now to firelight and stone, where memory curls not only in song and soil, but in ink pressed softly into paper that was never meant to be reddened, till now. It happens during ordinary tiding, a chill evening, the wind sharp, a low creak in the rafters, and the familiar crackle of your hearth, your resweeping ash gently from beneath the fire. Great nothing more than a routine motion when your broom catches on something that docently move. Not wood, not ember, stone, a hearthstone, set slightly apart, its edge chipped just enough to catch the light. You crouch and lift it carefully. It's lighter than expected. Beneath it, folded tightly and wrapped in waxed cloth, is a letter. A single page, thick, yellowed by time. The cloth smells faintly of time and iron. You unfold it with care. Ink is faded, but the hand is deliberate, trounded, slow, not rushed. A writing done not in haste, but with reverence. There is no name, no date, only a heading. To the one who remembers you, begin to read. If your eyes have found this, then something old has stirred again. Not because it was summoned, but because it was remembered properly without force, without fear. Only patience. I do not know your name, as you will not know mine. That is the way of the thread. Each hand touches it, knots it, releases it, but never holds it alone. Spiral leads us not outward, but deeper. It's deeper, into the land, into silence, into the space where we are more than names and less than histories. I was a keeper once. I tended the door that no longer opens. I buried the bell that now rings in hush. I carried the spindle until its thread broke clean, and before I left, I made a promise that if the thread were ever picked up again, if someone's steps aligned, even by accident or dream, I would leave them something simple. A map with no directions, a bell with no voice, a name without a mouth. You have found them all, so now it is not for me to tell you what to do. It is for you to listen to the stone, to the wind, to the places that echo when no one speaks. And if you are uncertain, know this. The land remembers. It will teach you, slowly, how to remember yourself. With every step you take, the path is made again. Not new, just unforgotten. There is a mark at the bottom, not a signature, just a single spiral. Drawn in dark ink, nearly bled into the page. You fold the letter again, but slower this time, not to hide it, to carry it. You place it in the pouch with the bell, the stone, with the spindle. You sit by the fire as the last coals glow, and in that quiet you understand. You are not here to finish something, you are here to continue. You feel it before you see it. The pull, again stronger now. It's not a summons, but a recognition. Like walking into a room you've never entered and knowing exactly where the chair belongs. It draws you to the forest's edge knot, to the moss wall, not to the grove, but farther. Past what you thought was familiar, past the place where memory gives way to instinct. The trees are bare now, winter brushing the branches clean. Leaves scatter at your feet, rustling like quiet voices rearranging themselves. And there it is, a circle, stone set, weather-worn, half buried beneath seasons of falling things. But now freshly uncovered, the earth within it is clear. No footprints, no marks. Only a ring at the center, made not of stone or rope, but feathers. Soft, pale, arranged deliberately. And in the very middle, resting upright, a woven token, small, made of dried rushes bound with gray thread. You kneel and lift it. On its underside, stitched faintly in green, your initials. You don't remember making it, but you recognize it. The way one recognizes their own reflection, not in glass, but in still water. You sit in the circle's center, for a moment, no sound, no wind, then a voice. Not spoken, not heard, but felt. You were always part of the thread. Even when you thought yourself unspooled, you placed the token back where it lay. Not to abandon it, but to acknowledge that it was never truly lost. And when you rise, the circle does not vanish. It simply settles into place, like a book closing gently on the final chapter. You walk back slowly, not with heaviness, but with a stillness earned. The village is quiet when you return, not silent, but restful. As if it, too, has come through something long and wordless, the bell still rests on the green. Now, beside it, 3 stones, newly placed, in a line that curves toward the old well. No one admits to placing them, but no one moves them either. You see Ellen tending her herbs in the frost-appled earth. She doesn't look up, but she speaks softly as you pass. You carried it well. You stop. What happens now? She smiles, without turning. Now it becomes ordinary again, till the thread stirs once more. And somehow, that comforts you more than answers ever could, 'cause nothing magical stays burning forever. It is the glow beneath the ash, the hum in the walls, the path that waits patiently beneath the weeds. You eat supper, you wash the bowl, you fold your cloak, you sleep, you dream not of spirals, or keys, or bells. You dream of soil, of hands planting something small, and of waking. Morning comes, bright, clear, the frost has lifted. The chimney smoke climbs high, the wind carries nothing but itself. You walk the lane once more, as you have so many times before. But now you see it differently. Not changed, just revealed. The weaver's spindle has a spiral etched faintly into its base. The bread oven bears a notch that matches the moss wall's angle. Even the path your feet take each day curls subtly inward, toward the heart of the green. It was never a story you entered. It was a rhythm you had always been part of. And now the thread lays down, not cut, not lost. Simply resting, waiting for the next pair of hands to lift it, to remember, to walk, to hum the wind's tune again. You sit by your hearth, not to begin anything, not to end anything, but simply to be still. Outside, the bell remains, quiet, whole, and the village breathes. Sleep comes not with ceremony, but with the comfort of belonging, knowing you helped carry the story far enough for it to settle. And that is enough. That is everything. That is the thread's gentle way. And so, the hearth goes quiet. The spiral unwinds. The last light of the medieval world folds gently into shadow, not lost, not faded, but lovingly tucked into the folds of time. The village has not disappeared. It's still there, in the bend of an old lane. In the hush that falls before a storm, in the scent of bread baking when you least expect it. In the silence between the pages of a well-worn book, perhaps you can still feel the weight of the bell in your palm, cool, smooth, or the hush of the grove, where names were whispered into soil as softly as breath. The day we walked together through frost and hay under skies of ash and blue, past hedges and hearths and memories edged, was not a story only of a time long gone. It was a reminder that the past does not live behind us like a locked door. It lives within us, threaded into gesture, into silence, into the gentle routines we carry. The peasant's life, hard, humble, cyclical, may seem distant, but echoes remain. In the rhythm of your own morning routine, in the quiet comfort of a favorite blanket, the way you pause before stepping into a doorway, in how you notice when the wind shifts or the kettle sighs, they woke to the same sky, though they called it by different names. They touched the same earth, though it bore other marks. They dreamed as you do not always of grandeur, but often of peace. And now, you carry their rhythm in your breath. Your journey back from that slow, grounded world will not be abrupt. It will not jar you awake. Instead, feel yourself floating gently forward through time's quiet waters toward the edges of your room. The present slowly taking shape again. You may hear familiar sounds now. The hum of something electric, the soft creak of your bed, the whisper of night passing through your window. Let it come, let it fold around you. Are not returning from a fantasy, but from a memory deeper than sight. And when you open your eyes now, or later, you might still carry the village with you. In the quiet way, your hand folds the blanket. In the comfort of repetition, in the softness you offer to yourself in stillness. This is not the end of a story. It's just where we set it down for now. The thread will wait. And so, as sleep approaches or as your waking moment begins, remember, the past is never far. It hums beneath your day, like the wind through that forgotten bell. You listened, you walked, you remembered, and now you rest.